So welcome. We're going to talk about what is a PSYOP because I think a lot of people are throwing that word around, and I don't think any of them know what they're talking about. So we're going to sort through all this and give you some very bad news, I'm sure, but that's what we're here for in Muppet Land. We've got our Muppet Cup, right? Just have you considered? That's the question. It's always the question. People tell you these sort of spiral death stories to panic you and overload your cognition. I know, video coming soon on cognitive overload. And that's a psyop. Oh, if we don't do this now, then the world will end. And or maybe it won't end for you, but your children or your children's children. That's a psychological operation, right? They're using psychology to manipulate you. I saw a quote go by my Instagram from Tyler Durden, which is a fictional character from a most excellent movie, Fight Club. And what he said was, we work jobs we hate, buying things we don't need with money we don't have to impress people we don't even like. A lot of people sort of resonated with Fight Club in general, and I don't know why. If you're working a job you hate, that's your fault. If you're buying things you don't need, that's your fault. If you're doing it with money you don't have, that's your fault. And if you're trying to impress people you don't like, that's two faults on you, being around people you don't like and trying to impress people. And interestingly, 3 frames later, scrolling through, I see Jordan B. Peterson video from ARC conference, I believe. Take responsibility for yourself. Fight Club is the anti-take responsibility for yourself movie. And Peterson's fighting it here in the Peterson sphere. Visit petersonsphere.com for more. I've got my article up. I'm going to put another article up soon, actually. By not me, by the way. Averages are a PSYOP. What's the average home price in America? It's a PSYOP. Using a psychological operation on you automatically, guaranteed. Doesn't even matter what comes next. There's no average home price for America that makes any sense. Who cares? There are average home prices for neighborhoods that can determine the price to live in that place, but that's not even a useful way to think about it. So 3.5 miles from me, I was telling the story earlier. People have houses for sale for a minimum of I think it's $250,000. 3.5 miles from me. Different county, different town, right? 3.5 miles, though. It's technically a city. That's the minimum. The maximum is like $1.5 million or $2 million or something crazy. So there's an average in there somewhere. It's probably closer to the low end because there are a lot of cheaper houses, obviously, and fewer expensive houses. That's the Pareto distribution, the Cauchy curve, instead of the Gaussian curve that everybody uses because they're dumb. It doesn't make any sense to average that out. Either you have more than $250,000 to live there or not, just the way it is. Now, over here, the average home price or the low home price that I know of, because it's a house that sold a few years ago behind me, it was $60,000, 60, with a house that you could move into. If you would want to move into it, maybe you need a little bit of work, but not really much. That's a big difference. So how do you average the house price in a 5-mile area of me and get any useful data? You can't. It's not possible. Beware of averages, right? What you care about is the top end, the bottom end, and the variance, not the average. Not everywhere. Some things are very prone to averages, but not really. The larger the set, the less likely it is an average can help you. Those are PSYOPs. Let me give you another PSYOP. There's a lot of PSYOPs around 9/11, Twin Towers disaster. And the way these PSYOPs are performed is very simple. Federal government did not blow up the buildings, you idiot. But somebody gave you correct information with the wrong references. What I'm referring to here is the Building 7 conspiracy theory for the World Trade Center. Now, my father, who allegedly has a PhD, which maybe should be taken back at this point, I think it's pretty established to be over, believes in the Building 7 conspiracy. And I pointed out to him that the building he was talking about is not Building 7. This fazed him not at all, by the way. Never does. The conspiracy theorists are never swayed by updates in their information landscape, ever. Information is not going to save the world. So, and I've looked into this quite extensively. Most of the 9/11 theories or conspiracies or conspiracy theories, all three, they're all different things, by the way, are based around factual information with incorrect references. So you switch which building picture you're showing them and say, this is Building 7. When it's not, they're going to come to different conclusions. Now, the facts haven't changed, but the information was swapped. In other words, there's a change in context. So, sorry for the conspiracy theorists, the conspiracy around 9/11 is not that the government did it. The conspiracy is the conspiracy theorists have fooled you into thinking that it must be the government that did it. I hate to say it, but the US government, at the best of times, if they were aiming for something, be fairly sure that ain't going to happen because they just suck at doing things. Especially the CIA, by the way. Terrible. Let's talk about a better PSYOP, an actual PSYOP, actually performed by the actual CIA, MKUltra. The thing about MKUltra is that, yeah, I mean, the government did this. It's a PSYOP within a PSYOP to some extent, right? Because I might be wrong about this, but as near as I can tell, MKUltra is kind of the birth of sort of the materialist, scientific, chemical, psychological attack on people, right? Overtly, right? You can argue, oh, psychology goes back. Kind of doesn't, but whatever. We'll get into that later. MKUltra is what produced Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. No, really, actually. So that didn't go well for the government. Now, did it? And there's lots of deaths around the MKUltra thing, and including the researchers, by the way, some of whom were definitely whacked by the CIA. So this is a problem. Their papers for MKUltra were destroyed. So we don't know, nor will we ever, what happened. Right? But we know a bunch of people. In fact, I personally know of some people who allege, I can't prove it, I wasn't there, right? MKUltra was before I was born, allege that their siblings were, went to Harvard and came out schizophrenics and that they were involved in this MKUltra program. Seems credible, by the way. But again, the purpose of the MKUltra program itself is a PSYOP. But the fact that it happened is also a PSYOP. For sure. Like for real. Like for real. So it's not that they don't exist, these PSYOPs. They do. They do. The question is, who's doing them? And are they doing them on purpose? Or are you just psychologically projecting because you want the world to be a certain way? So, for example, it's not that women have been told not to have kids. It's not like, oh, your parents told you don't have. I mean, some people have for sure, right? Because there's always exceptions. But it's worth sort of considering that what really happened was women were given an option that wasn't have kids, right? Because normally there was pretty much no option. You get married, you have kids. That's what you do. It's almost like we were built for that or something, but that implies all kinds of icky things like creation and creators and intent and all the things that make evolution work, without which evolution couldn't actually function. You can justify your rebellion against your parents if you have an option other than have kids. So they say, have kids. You say, oh, I have another option. And from the individualistic perspective, which every single person has an individualistic perspective, for sure, right? Perspective that pretty much involves only them, kind of by definition, right? It's clearly less good to have kids. There's no question about that. That can't be debated, not reasonably. I mean, you can debate anything. Just say no like a 3-year-old all day long. It's not hard. 3-year-olds do it all the time. But if you're given an option, now you have space to rebel. right? You have a place to be other than having kids. So you weren't told not to have kids, but a door was opened and you took the door of no kids. Again, that goes back to personal responsibility. It's only if you can account properly for things outside of yourself that outlast you and are greater than just you that the lie is revealed. It's a psyop of individualism, confirmed. The lie of individualism, the psyop, is there. People have psychologically manipulated other people into believing that you don't have to have kids. And maybe it's not universal, right? Because nothing is. So that's a problem. But it's important. All the recent, say, I don't know, post 1960 so-called education is overtly a psyop. What people are talking about when they say education is formation. It's formation that people care about, and that's what they're talking about. Who is forming my children in school? It's a good question. Depends who's around them. And when you look at it in that light, you realize it's a group of people trying for a specific outcome, right? They're attempting to instantiate a specific type of an outcome. So when they say education, that's what they mean. Now, it's not coordinated in the way most psyops are thought of, and we'll get into that later. But education is psyop confirmed. What they're really talking about is formation. The use of the term education is the psyop. It's formation that you care about. You're forming ideas and knowledge of people. Knowledge is not some static, objective, material thing that you can just go out and have. All influencers are technically psyops, getting you to follow them through psychological means. It's the systematizing or the proceduralizing of a science, if it is a science of psychology, to enable the manipulation towards a known end. Sounds like a psyop. In and of itself, not necessarily bad, but tends towards the bad because without an explicit good aim, most aims will corrupt. And the problem here is that not all people or institutions that use those methods are a psyop. You need to be moved. Those moves or those attempts to move you will be describable via psychology. Any movement or attempt to move another person can therefore be put in the frame of psychology and can be called a psyop. You can do that. I don't think it's helpful because then everything's a psyop, but like you can do that. I can't stop you, but I wish you wouldn't. And the thing is, it might even offer an explanation or a prediction a la Edward Bernays. But then again, so does economics. So you can describe people's behaviors in terms of economics or psychology or both. Those are great descriptions for certain purposes, very limited purposes. Psychology is a bad frame. It's very individualistic. Economics is a bad frame. It's not as individualistic, but it's really dumb. And it's about the same level of description. It's about the same level of explanation and the same level of prediction. Which one do you prefer, psychology or economics? You can swap them out. It really won't help you much either way. That's good to know. Not everything's a psyop. Ultimately, seeing everything as a psyop is shoving everything into a psychological frame and assuming intent, usually based on outcome, rationality, competence, and a level of organization or coordination. And look, Hannah, I can just tell you, that isn't the way the world is, man. It's just not that way. Not ever, but like fairly infrequently. In fact, just telling you that you're a rational creature is a psyop against yourself. It allows you to be more easily controlled, and explicitly so. It's a bigger danger and a huge problem. You think you have more power, more control, more intelligence, more ability, more skill than you do. The implication is that the world is perfect or well controlled by competent people who know what they are doing and had a clear intent from the start. And that isn't the world that we live in. It's almost as if the world is a less than perfect place. Maybe it's a fallen world. Why are we subject to this idea of a PSYOP, of just everything being a PSYOP? Well, it's because having a good description helps, or seems to help, and you get lost, and you want to engage differently, as if there's more rationality in the world. We long for this clear description of what's going on, of how things are. And we want somebody to describe. And that's the first step. It's a great step. It's the first step, though, on the ladder of comfort. And this pattern's everywhere. So it's not just PSYOPs, this comfort ladder. The next rung on the ladder of comfort is explanation. Explanations are very comforting because they give you a string of reasons that cohere together, seemingly, that it's more comfortable than just a description of what is, because it ties it into the world. It adds that relationship dimension back in. The last rung on this ladder is prediction. And that's what we all long for, to know the future in advance so that we can take right action when it's time. The prediction gives us the time and what's going to happen. And that gets us to the point where we can take right action. Because we're rational creatures who are in control and intentional. We can just do that. We have all the skills we need. So we long for that. And the PSYOP allows us a level of understanding of otherwise mysterious events moved by spirits or egregores or whatever you want to call them this week. They're still just spirits, by the way. But that's too abstract for us. We cannot understand it because it is much bigger than we are. Our minds cannot hold it. The things outside of you are definitionally bigger than you are. What moves you is outside of you. It may come at you from within or seem to. That's possible, but it's still bigger than you, for better or for worse. It's not necessarily a bad thing. The idea that the government is actively doing something to you or your group is a function of the intimacy crisis. This idea that the government cares enough about you and put enough resources into you or your group to perform a PSYOP against you or your group or some group of people that are like you is just an attempt to recover intimacy that you have already lost as the result of knowing you live in a highly controlled, easily understood, clear world. One manifestation of the intimacy crisis, one of many. But the truth is, we live in an incomplete, messy, imperfect, fallen world. So what is a better way to think about PSYOPs? How about in terms of cognitive overload? PSYOPs are effective only in an intimacy crisis. It doesn't have to be a global one. It could be an intimacy crisis that you're having because of how you grew up or what happened to you recently. Only with the lack of historical grounding can these PSYOPs be successful. Only when you are seeking meaning rather than participating in meaning. Only when you live in the age of gnosis, where propositional knowledge is the highest value. Knowledge will not save you. It will point you to a PSYOP every single time. If knowledge holds the world together, it is the highest value. If it binds us, or is supposed to, if only so-and-so knew this, then they'd think differently, then we cannot bind properly without propositions. This must be true. The only way to convey knowledge's value to others is through propositions. That's the age of gnosis. Knowledge is not propositions. Propositions are the communication or expression of something. Could be knowledge, could be facts, could be information, could be gobbledygook. People say gobbledygook all the time. We usually call it word salad, things like that. But let me give you some examples. One trick I've noticed that people seem oblivious to, especially in this, oh, you need to straw man or steel man or whatever man, the other person's thing. No, you don't. That's garbage. Somebody tells you a bad story, you can't steel man it. It's just bad. But once you build a story, you cannot disentangle it or disintegrate it with a single fact, at least not in the moment. See my example earlier about World Trade Center 7, very easy to debunk, but it doesn't work. A bit like watching Penn and Teller. I love Penn and Teller. Do their magic tricks where they explain to you how the magic trick works, or you already know how the magic trick works, and every time you look, you can't find it. And that's beautiful. So who cares? You want cognitive overload? Watch a magic show. Watch it live if you don't trust the camera. It won't make any difference at all. What happens is people build a coherent and cohesive story. And that's the key to a good PSYOP. A single fact cannot dismantle the structure, or a set of facts even. It's the reason why no one can dethrone Sam Harris or Destiny, another one of these people that does this little trick, even when they're so obviously wrong and stupid. It's like building a dock over the water, right? They first watched them lay out all the pillars, this fact and that fact and this fact and that fact, and therefore, which is just nailing down the dock, nailing the dock together and placing it on the pillars. And all these pillars are lies. They're all wrong. They're all inaccurate. But you know what? You got to be kind and let the other person finish their point. You notice I don't do that. The minute I see the PSYOP, I put an end to it. You can be upset about that if you want. It's not going to do you any good. I'm still going to do it. It's still the right thing to do. And any interlocutor comes along very patiently and dismantles all the core key axiomatic facts used to build that dock over that water. But you know what? All the people that were listening to Sam Harris or Destiny, who got caught up in the coherence of the story, they're standing on that dock, and they're not going to fall in the water for you just because you took out their pillars. They're not going to do it. They don't want to get wet. I don't blame them. The dock remains intact and floating above the water. Now both sides win. Sam Harris has his followers undeterred. Whoever's interlocutor is has taken all the pillars out, and all the people who knew the pillars were garbage to begin with cheer. Fantastic, you've done nothing. Well done. Destiny does that same trick. Build the story that sounds so attractive. The thing is, with Destiny, he's definitely psyoping himself into thinking he's got it all figured out. And now the solution is obvious. And the obvious solution isn't being implemented. Who's to blame? It must be a PSYOP. The government must be in on it. Well, we elected the Democrats, so it can't be them. It's got to be the deep state, or maybe it's the Republican-controlled CIA, or this goes on forever, by the way, forever with these people. Then it's like, oh no, really, it's the wealthy guy with all the money, and all the wealthy people who are evil are Republicans, clearly. So it's a PSYOP. That's the PSYOP. The PSYOP isn't the wealthy Republicans or the wealthy Democrats, by the way. The PSYOP is getting you to believe that. And look, at some point, this is not a joke. If I were evil, I would do that too. I would. It's very effective. But I'm not going to do that because I'm not evil. So sorry. Disappointment all around. There are days. But another method of getting you into the PSYOP is to use your own ego against you, your own sense of comfort, your own love of your description, your explanation, and or your prediction. People will appeal to your bad descriptions, your bad explanations, or your bad predictions to blame the PSYOP. You would have been right if not for the government PSYOP. And this seems convincing. After all, you were right. This outside force imposed upon your prediction, upon your explanation, upon your description, upon the very world in which you live, to make you wrong. That's horrible of them. I resent them for that. How could they? I'm outraged. I was right. But now I'm anxious. Now I'm paranoid, at least mildly. And now you're easily led into righteous indignation. Ooh, righteous indignation that's not good. Clearly, if the world isn't working the way I thought it did, the way I had worked out in my head as an individual who's smart and educated, I have a degree, I went to school, I got a minor in economics, then something must be wrong with the world. It's not matching my predictions. Postmodern power, top down from above narrative confirmed. Postmodernism told you that. Now you have an excuse for being wrong. It's fantastic. It's somebody else's fault. You have to take responsibility for it for yourself. What's another PSYOP? Well, you know what? You're smart enough to see PSYOPs, which incidentally might just be perennial patterns. So you're immune to the PSYOPs because you know about them. Age of gnosis. Propositionally. So subconsciously, you're immune. That's a PSYOP. No one is immune, period. They do this with the so-called biases. Well, everyone's biased. There's all these biases. There's confirmation bias and there's sample bias. But once you know about the biases, you're all set. Except they don't tell you what you can do about the biases, do they? No, of course not. Sometimes they'll do something cute. Like they'll say, oh yeah, well, if you meditate on these biases or if you reflect on them, then you're less likely to fall into them. And that may be true, but you're not immune to them, buddy. That didn't happen. That ain't gonna happen. That's the PSYOP. The concept that you can understand things yourself is why PSYOPs are necessary. Something has to be causing what you see. Material, cause, confirmed. And that's what we want, is a confirmation of certainty. We have obtained the certainty. And that's all we're wishing for when we think about PSYOPs. Oh, I know why that happened. It wasn't a coincidence or an accident. It wasn't some sort of events that always unfold that way because they always unfold that way. It was deliberate. It was intentional. It was thought out and planned, implemented by highly competent, intentional actors, well coordinated, who knew exactly what they were doing. When you cannot recognize proper authority and leadership, you can't discern those things. Organized events appear to have the properties of the PSYOP, the assumption of control, the assumption that a common goal must be organized by us, by people, or a person. The pharmaceutical industry had to have been created by John Rockefeller. Even though the timeline doesn't match, by the way, like none of it at all. Like the pharmaceutical industry was actually pretty good up until the 90s and the FDA ruined it. Maybe I'll do a video on that. If you want to see a video on that, live stream, comment in the comments, whatever. Maybe I'll do one. I just, that whole freaking, that's a PSYOP, by the way. All these things going around about Rockefeller and the pharmacies. It's just wrong. Like, it's just like everything about it is actually incorrect and you can look it up and it's clear as day. But they know you're lazy. That's the other side. They know you won't look it up. Human knowledge, you won't use it. They know that. They know that because you have this, you'll never look it up. Not everybody. I look everything up. But almost everybody. Close enough. And then if almost everybody won't look it up, or let's just say 52% of the people won't look it up, bang, consensus, democracy, corrupted forever. This is why I'm not a fan of democracy. It's a democratic republic here in the US. Democratic republic. It's a republic, to say. This idea of this organized common goal ignores spirit. It ignores the unconscious. It ignores desires, passions. It ignores all that. But these are the most common causes of human behavior. Unconscious, passions, spirit. These are the things that drive you. Not somebody orchestrating something. It's another PSYOP. Equality doctrine. If everyone is equal, then everything that doesn't fit your normalized model of the world is a PSYOP. Of course it is. It has to be. This is why equality doctrine is so dangerous. People start talking about equal inequality and all that nonsense. Run away. They're PSYOPing you. They've PSYOPed themselves more likely, but you're just a casualty in the PSYOP chain for them. The fact is that most real PSYOPs that are attempted by organizations fail and produce horrific unintended consequences, or maybe second order effects is another way to say that, because you lose control of the thing when you spread it out. If you try to do something by yourself, you have much tighter control over it. Of course, you're a limited creature. You shouldn't try to do things by yourself. Generally speaking, you should involve other people, right? It'll be less efficient. It won't be done the right way most of the time. Sometimes it'll be more efficient. Kind of depends, right? But it'll be better. The more you spread something out, the more variability it has. By definition, it's a math problem at this point, okay? Math. It's nothing to do with anything else, just math. Variance goes up, you lose control. And sure, all the successful PSYOPs were successful. You fell for them. They're done. It's over. You can only see them in hindsight. Sure, you might have found out about them afterwards, but that's too late. Why do you care? It's all done. What are you going to do? Nothing. You're going to do nothing. That's what you're going to do. No one's going to do anything. So why are you pointing at things bigger than you that you cannot recognize, control, or avoid? Because you can't recognize, control, or avoid them. If someone's going to do a PSYOP on you, you're done. Because it won't be one person, most likely. And that makes it bigger than you. Don't worry about it. And because the unconscious is most of your life, you are easily manipulated because you're only looking at the conscious side of thinking. And you're thinking that all that conscious side is all there is. And I see this thread, although the McGilchrist-Peterson conversation, McGilchrist brought this up, not Peterson. The unconscious is bigger. It's way bigger. I mean, he quoted some ridiculous number like 94.3% and said it's oddly specific, so I don't believe it. But the unconscious is most of what you do, most of your life. And when you don't tend to that, and no one's talking about the unconscious anymore, I don't know why. They're like, oh, Freud and Jung, okay, but like they knew about this and said this was the bigger, more important piece, guys. Why aren't we talking about it? Weird. You've been PSYOPed by this irrationality, by this rationality BS. PSYOPed. Rationality is not all there is. It's not all it's cracked up to be. You can't even define it. We are not rational creatures. Okay? Sorry. We are creatures capable of rationality for very short times at great cost. And no one tells you that. I'll tell you that. I'll tell you that because it's important. So what do you do? How can you live with the reality of rare PSYOPs, even more rare, successful ones, while knowing that you're subject to them? Be aware of people offering answers which contain no action on your part, maybe no relationship to you, unless they're telling you to disengage your attention and the issue at hand is far away, or maybe that they're going to take care of it, right? Maybe then that's okay, right? Disengage, let them deal with it. Trust them, and maybe you'll be betrayed because we all get betrayed. Everybody's going to get betrayed. Hate to break it to you. And be aware of the responsibility. Who's taking that on? And where is it being taken on? Where is this responsibility being shifted to? Does listening to the news about a faraway place make you responsible for that place? Can it? I heard about this country being bombed in the news. Does that make you responsible for their actions? People are acting like it does, or it should, or it could. All of them, by the way. To understand is an individualistic thing. Understanding things through psychology is individualistic frame by design. And what you might not realize about that is that all psychological operations are you. And what do I mean by that? Surely the CIA is out there doing something to someone. Yes. But again, it's not optional. Successful PSYOPs are successful. It's a very hindsight bias frame to know about a PSYOP. And you need to be strong psychologically, if such a thing exists, to protect yourself. Knowing about a PSYOP, even if you did know in advance, won't help you not fall for it. Knowing in advance won't save you. The age of gnosis has lied to you about the power of knowledge. Knowing is not half the battle, or any of the battle. Stupid people are often less likely to, quote, fall for a PSYOP. It's a common problem with real world operations, by the way, and this is well documented. It happens over and over. Look at the history of Central and South America and the CIA's attempts to do anything there. Ugh. You'd think after the first 42,000 times they'd figure it out, but no. So stupid people are less likely to fall for these things than smart people are. PSYOPs are designed for smart people. Confidence kills. Be less confident, more humble. The effects of a successful PSYOP are going to be less on the people who are just doing the good. It's not going to be nothing. They might get wiped out. You might lose everything. Nothing I can do about that. Nothing you can do about that. We all get betrayed. One thing you can do is proper participation in a structure that you can be contained within, where you can contribute, despite the fact that the structure sucks and it's wrong and the people suck and just it's going to betray you. But in that structure, you do not have to worry about those things so far outside yourself, like politics, that you have nearly no influence over, much less control of, much less even understanding of. Although they'll tell you understand it. Oh, you watch CNN, I understand this. From people with a below average IQ, by the way, for professionals, journalists have below average IQ for professionals. Because people will use this to manipulate you in a way that you have no ability to defend against as a single individual. You just don't. You can't do it. Structures are things which protect you against things bigger than you. They can also tyrannize you. Sure, absolutely. Sometimes for your own good, by the way. Like you tyrannize children constantly, and that's to form them. So it goes back to education is formation, right? And that's good for them. Formation is important. Going to work every day is good for you. Being on vacation constantly is not. So tyranny is not some automatically defaulted evil condition. What if things bigger than you move you and you have no choice? Better a structure you understand, chose for yourself, and accepted, maybe the trade-off of, then be subject to whatever you're rebelling against or whatever is out there that you don't realize has captured you. Because just rebelling against everything you see as a structure, that won't work. And that, my friends, concludes my treatise on PSYOP.